This week we're going to talk about transparency. One way to create transparency using our software is to use layers and changing the opacity. Now, something I want to point out before we move ahead is that with your template, we want to go ahead and make sure that these opaque areas that overhang, or these areas that overhang, are opaque. We want to make sure that the whole bar isn't transparent, because then we're going to have transparency with the background, and that can throw off kind of this look that we're looking for to show that you use the same color along the way. And along this, we're going to end up here, where you can see that these are still opaque, but this area here is transparent, as we can see here in these windows. I'm going to turn them on and off so you can see. And the biggest thing we're going to do here is just to change the opacity. We're going to talk about this a little bit more as we work through this step by step. So we're going to go ahead and select our layer. And this may be your template, maybe a background. If it's locked, unlock it. Just name it. It'll unlock it. It's kind of a quick way to do it. You can there's a couple other ways, but we can talk about those in class if necessary. So we've got our layer that we're going to work with, and we've made our selection here. We can just use the wand real quick and just select again, and it's no big deal. So what we're going to do is pick our colors. Eyedropper tool, I'm going back. You can have these already set here, and notice now I have them. I can just go back and forth as I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and put the horizontal bar as the foreground color, and I'm just going to use the paint bucket tool. Now, while we have this selection, we want to go ahead and create a new layer, and by clicking on it I can go ahead and give it a title. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch my background color to my foreground color so I can put this yellow on top. And as you can see right now, it's opaque. We can't see the the background at all. But as we change the opacity, they slowly kind of blend together. So in this first one on the left, we're going to go ahead and keep it on top. So we're going to set this opacity above 50%. And we'll talk about this a little bit more as we move through. So let's go ahead and move on to our next layer. So again, we're going to put the blue in the background, move it to the foreground. And while we still have our selection, we're going to go ahead and create a new layer. Now, you don't need to title these, but I'm doing this for an example to help you. And we can go ahead and put that on top. Now, for an ambiguous relationship, we want to go ahead and make this opacity at 50%. Only at 50% will it be ambiguous. So let's go ahead and do our last one. We're going to go ahead and look at these colors at the end here. So hang in there with me for just another moment. So again, now it doesn't really matter, which one's in the background, which one's in the foreground. I'm only doing this to kind of help emphasize this change in opacity. So again, switch your colors, whatever you need in the foreground. This saves you a little bit of time. You can also use your swatches if you like. I've got the color window open because I'm going to show you something in a second. So again, add our color, and this time to drop the yellow behind, we're going to put that opacity below 50%. At 50, we've got that ambiguous relationship. Anything below this foreground color will actually appear to be in the background. Let's go ahead and put it 25%, keep it kind of even. Now, one way we can kind of tell our transparent areas, and I'll put this in a post later on, is that we can switch this to our RGB sliders, and we can look at our RGB values. Now you can see here we've got, as we talked about, 255 for our red and green to show our fully saturated yellow. And for our cyan, we've got a 255, for our green and our blue. Now when we're looking at, the ambiguous layer, which is the easiest to tell, we can see that we basically get contributions from both. So both greens were at 255, so it has to remain at 255. But in our yellow, we had a red of 255, but in our cyan, there is no red. So that number gets split in half. You kind of basically add them together, divide by 2, and you'll get whatever that is. Now, layers and opacity does this all for us, makes it very simple. Nothing kind of strange is going on, but we can use these RGB values to help evaluate our transparent areas, which we'll talk about more. Now, kind of looking ahead, since I've got a few moments, we want to look ahead to our fifth week where we use color harmonies, and we want to notice that when we're trying to use something like a red, green, and blue harmony, we don't want to introduce new colors, and that's what can happen with transparency, is that when they blend, they can make a new color. So here we have this blue magenta going on, and and here we're going to end up with this orange yellow. And this is another file I'll post, and hopefully we can look at that and talk about it some more. But something to think about as we move into week 5.